Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It is your favorite warlock, practicing necromancer. And today I want to talk to you about the moon cycles. This was a question that was brought up to me on my last video. And because I mentioned 21 days, or that you could cast a spell up to about 21 days, allow me to break this down for you. The moon cycle does not play into an effect of baneful or wrathful sorcery. Planetary stature such as Saturn, for an example, is a part of it, yes. The moon, however, really does not play into it. The rarest moon cycle is the crescent moon. Outside of that, you have the supermoons of various colors. Now, the ironic part here is that even though a full moon and a supermoon can bring more potency to a degree within certain rituals, ceremonial type rituals, when it comes to flat out cursing someone, that's a whole nother story. You can start on the beginning of a moon cycle, go into the middle of it, and then send it out in the end of it. Okay? The waning, the waxing, and the full. Okay? The three phases of the moon. You can do that if you want. But when it comes down to actual cursing, there is no time limit. There is no degree on the potency level of a rite or a ritual. For an example, I mentioned to this individual in a reply text about possession. Okay, let's say demonic possession. Okay, you have what is known as an infestation. Now, this infestation level could be classified as the creation level. Okay, when you create a spell, you can do this up to a week. That's 7 days. Okay. Then you have what is called the manifestation level. Okay. The manifestation level is where you are charging the ritual. Okay. And then you have what is called the takeover. Okay. The takeover is where you send that completed ritual out into the ether to manifest in the individual's life. Okay. So, understanding it in that concept, people put too much stock and emphasis on the moon cycles. The moon cycles has nothing to do with cursing or hexing. It does play into certain ceremonial rituals, such as summoning a demon or a jinn, an orisha. The best times to summon nocturnal forces. Even if you're trying to manifest a spirit, the moon cycles would play into it, especially if you are utilizing, say, for an example, the clavicle of Solomon. Okay, just out of an example. But for the most part, when you're doing a personalized rite, such as a curse, a hex, or a jinx, say for an example, if you're trying to remove an obstacle at work, you're trying to give somebody bad luck, which is basically what a jinx is. Okay, you're making them literally fuck up at work so that they're going to be overlooked by the upper management. Okay, which puts the ball in your category, in your path. Then you have a hex. A hex is basically to teach somebody a lesson. Okay, this teaches them, don't fuck with me. You either learn from your mistake, or there's the graveyard over there where you're going to end up. Flat out. Okay. Now, if they persist past that point, then you go into vile magic, and that's cursing. And a lot of people, like the moon cycles, classify all three of these things as one type of rite, when in fact they are three. Okay? Now, doing a spell in such a way that can take up to about 21 days, if you so choose. It doesn't have to be 21 days. You can do it for 14 days. You can do it for 50 days. You can do it for 90 days. It does not matter. I mean, I once spent, and I said this in the last video too, is I spent 2 years cursing an enemy in his temple. The entire building became vacant. Then it became condemned, unfit for human habitation. The man lost his family. He lost his friends, his congregation, lost 2 sanctuaries. And now the first one has been demolished almost 10 years later, after sitting vacant for 10 years. Has been demolished. It's nothing but rubble right now. The time limit does not matter. It is your intention that matters. It is the amount of energy that you put into the ritual that you're performing. Do you have the correct tools for that ritual? These are the things that you want to pay more homage to. You want to pay more attention to these type of things rather than the moon cycles. The time of meridian, for an example, which is midnight to 3 a.m., is a great time to throw a curse or to perform any kind of spiritual ritualized actions, such as meditations, communings, conjurations, um, spell castings, especially when your victim or your target is in the Z state of slumber. Okay. Now, what's interesting here is because people put so much stock and emphasis on moon cycles, this is more pagan and Wiccan tradition. And it goes along with things like the equinox and the solstices. It kind of makes them feel like they're in control of their lives. In the old days, all you had to do was pay attention to the planetary alignments. That's it. Look at astrology, who you're trying to summon. If you look at, for an example, the goetic demons, for an example, you have those that operate during the daytime, and then you have those that operate during the day, operate during the night, rather. Okay, so if you're contacting a spirit during the night from the Goetia, this is the Lesser Key of Solomon, which is what most ceremonial magicians will do or utilize, for that matter. They will utilize the time frame, be it say for example 8 to 9 or 9 to 10 and so forth around the clock, to associate with that spirit. But if you are doing cursing and hexing, okay, there is no time limit on this. You can do it as long as you want. The more you do it, the more energy put into it, the more potent it becomes. The moon cycle has no sway over it. None whatsoever. But that is a very good question that was put forth. And because most moon cycles will last about 13 days. 13 days, not 14 days, not 9 days, not 21 days. But I want you to think about it in this fashion. The first 7 days is the creation process. This is where you are forging the link between your spell and that victim. Okay? The second week, 7 to 14 days. Okay? This is where you are utilizing the charging method. You're literally building that energy up. Think of it like a big giant energy ball in between your hands. The more you focus on it during that charging process, you've already created it here between day 0 and 7 days. 1 to 7 days creation, 7 to 14 charging. Okay? So here, 7 to 14 days, you're creating that energy. You're building it up. You're making it more dense. So if you're utilizing alchemy, for an example, let's look at it from, say, the 4 elements: earth, water, fire, and air. Okay? Earth and water are the most densest properties that is around. The densest. But by adding air or fire, you can intensify that density or you can lessen it. Have you ever noticed how a giant balloon is heavy until you put helium in it? Then it becomes light. You hook it to a basket and it floats the basket away. Even if somebody's in that basket, it still lifts them. You have a battleship like the Bismarck from World War II floating on the ocean. But yet, if you toss a stone into water, it sinks. Did you ever ask yourself why? What is the difference between something as massive as the Bismarck and that of a stone? Or better yet, how about a troop transport or a military supply vessel flying through the air compared to, say, a feather? Two different densities, but yet one can fly and the other, without being attached to a bird, falls right down to the ground. Kind of hovers down to the ground. Interesting concept, isn't it? But it takes oxygen, it takes air, and a dynamic over the wingspans to get it to fly. It's lessening that density. So if you're charging a spell between 7 days and 14 days, what do you think you're doing? What do you think you're doing? You're enriching that potency. Now, the thing I like to do is from 14 to 21 days, I like to leave it sitting in the altar room. I like to leave it sitting there for another 7 days. This is the takeover, the casting out into the ether process. This is where the individual would basically end up devastated, destroyed, because during 14 and 21 days, that spell is seeking into every molecule, every proton, every crevice of that target's life. And the more they fight, the deeper it takes hold. This is where you cast it off. And after the 21 days, I'll just discard it. I'll put it in the river. I'll bury it in a cemetery. I'll take it out into the woods and bury it. Someplace a mile way away from my place of residence. You see, this is what happens with a spell. So where does the moon cycle fit into all this? It doesn't. It really has no effect one way or the other in cursing or hexing. The only thing, like I said, that the moon cycle plays into effect in is pagan and Wiccan traditions. It is something that was created during a time of Wiccan uprising. Think of it as Wiccan revival, Wiccan style. That's basically all that was. The moon phases can enrich even further, but outside of that, it really doesn't do anything. Outside of makes the tide go out and come in. It has a psychological perspective on you, yes, but nothing more than that. Think of it as looking at the zodiacs. For an example, there's a light side and a dark side. Does the moon cycle have any effect on that? Or does nurture versus nature play into effect more than the moon cycle? I want you to think about that. Just think about that for a time. I want you to sit down and every night I want you to watch the moon cycles come and go for, say, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months even. And I want you to perform a little experiment. Just an experiment. Think of it as alchemical experimentation. I want you to use your psychology, your emotion, your raw emotion in your spells. I want you to think about all that the wrong that that individual has done to you or to your client. I want you to think about that coworker that's trying to show you up, trying to get the attention of the higher ups, or that's going for the same position that you are. And I want you to start casting small little tidbits of curses. Think of it as whispers in the dark. And you do this daily and daily and daily. Every night, I want you to take a photo, set it on your altar, and shroud it, and place a circle of brimstone powder around it. Add a little bit of black sand and some crystallized salt, sea salt or bath salts. I recommend both. Combine them. Hell of a potency right there. Electrical current goes around it. Amazing. And then I want you to keep that photo right there in the center. I want you to use it right there in the center. I want you to have your blood ready, and I want you to place an X over their eyes, their mouth, their throat, their ears, eliminate their five senses. Speak the curses. Allow that anger and that emotion to just flow into that effigy. And I want you to do this over this length of time. Say, for an example, just go with 21 days. Depending on how much experimentation you need, keep records of all the changes, no matter how minor or how greater. I want you to do this over the next 2 to 3 months. You can go as far as 6 months down the road if you want. That's up to you. How much energy that you decide to put into your rites is on you. Okay? But I want you to take note, be observant of your surrounding. When we use the term remote viewing, what we're doing is we're watching what's around us from a distance, from a whole nother room, a whole nother side of the planet, if you will. But it's projection that gets this shit done. Projection. You are projecting your will into the ether and onto your victim or your target. It has nothing to do with the moon cycle. And you'll come to see that the more you practice, the more you experiment with this. And I want you to look at it from, say, 3 different angles. Okay? 3 different angles. I want you to look at it I want you to cast 3 different spell castings. And I want you to take note of each one and how they progress. Take 3 different journals and kind of just say, this is the individual, this is what my intent is, this is what I'm cursing them with or placing a spell on for such and such a reason. And then just over the next 2 to 3 months, write down what you witness. Any change is good change. I want you to experiment with this. And by the time these experiments are up, I guarantee it, you're going to see the moon cycles hold no sway. You can curse somebody 365 days a year. It is not limited or added to by the moon cycle. And you'll notice this. All right? Have a good day. And until next time, I'm out.